This episode is brought to you by Farmers Insurance. When was the last time you reviewed your insurance policy? So it's been a while, huh? Well, no worries. My friends at the Austin Brummett Agency would love to hear from you and provide you with some amazing rates. Give them a call at 678-402-8262 or email them at abrummett@farmersagent.com. That's ABRUMIT at farmersagent.com, and tell them Harli sent you. Insiders, Inside the Bubble with Harli G is now sponsored by BetterHelp. As a partner of this episode, listeners can access the BetterHelp link located in the show notes to receive 10% off your first month of therapy with BetterHelp and get matched with a therapist who will listen and help. Go to BetterHelp, that is BetterHelp.com/inside the bubble, the link to get started. You're listening to Inside the Bubble with Harli G, the podcast for the superwoman. Every week, we connect with amazing individuals who share their inspirational experiences and stories while motivating and inspiring purpose. It's time to hang your cape. Grab your coffee, your water, your cocktail, and come on in Inside the Bubble with me, your host, Harli G. Welcome, insiders, to Inside the Bubble with Harli G. I am here with somebody that has, wow, your story is amazing. And so I'm here with Dr. Marci Granville. And I am really excited about what we're getting ready to talk about. And I want to hit on multiple things, okay? So, one, definitely your story that has perseverance, that has trials, that has victory in it to lead you to where you are today. And then two, even, talking about that journey to you even becoming a doctor. So, this woman is goals. She legit put herself through school, so you guys are gonna hear that story. But I'm just saying, like, you are #goals, okay, for everything that you have gone through. And she even wrote a book, which is, we're definitely gonna hit on that. We're definitely gonna have to talk about that. So we have lots to talk about today. But I actually know Dr. Granville from our 9 to 5. And we've met there. And I want to talk about a little funny story. May not be funny, but I want to talk about a story about how we met. And and she's like, oh my God, what is Harli gonna say? What is Harli gonna say? Don't say it, don't say it. So this is really, this is just to kind of show that you never know why people are put on your path, right? And I want to talk about it because I kind of want to bring it full circle. Okay, so when I started at my current job, I was quickly thrown into the wellness role, so leading wellness for the company. And when I started, my now VP was the one who, our department was very small, so she had to wear many different hats. Right. And she was the one who ran wellness and did benefits. I mean, like, did everything. And so when I finally came on, she was like, oh my gosh, thank God, somebody that's passionate about wellness. I can just give it to you. You can run with it or whatever. Was super happy to have the opportunity to do that. And I started taking on wellness. And you were actually on the wellness committee already. And now I will tell you that when Sheirra means business, she means business. Okay? Like, her whole demeanor is like, I mean business. And I forgot what the situation was, but I was like, okay, I wanna talk to Sheirra, and I wanna give her some feedback. Because I knew that you had a lot of knowledge having been there for a while. And I was just like, but I don't want her to take it the wrong way, or I wanted to make sure that you knew where it was coming from, the intent behind it. And so I pulled she, and then of course, like when HR pulls somebody and they go into a room, like, first of all, that's not a good look, okay? No. So first of all, the fact that I'm HR and I'm like, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? So already Sheirra was not feeling it. And we go into this room and I'm like, Sheirra, I would like to give you some feedback. Are you open to it? And you were just, at this point, you were kind of like, well, you're going to give me the feedback anyway. So, so you were just kind of like, I guess. Anyway, and I gave you the feedback. And I was just like, I don't know if it's just, and I really did not know you. I mean, like, literally, we probably known each other for like maybe a month or whatever, if that. But so I didn't know you, and I gave the feedback, and I remember kind of walking away like, I think she doesn't like me. Like, I think she does not like me. And we didn't really engage or interact for a while. And then you were in a tuition reimbursement program. So I was also the individual that was managing that program. And so kind of got to know you a little bit through that, just having conversations about your tuition and what you were doing. And then little by little kind of started building that relationship to where and there were some situations where I was like, wait, are we friends, or are we not friends, or are we good, are we not good? And literally, I would say, I will actually attribute this to you and who you are. You were just like, I don't care what perception that people have of me, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to overcome it. And I'm going to show people that there's more to me than this demeanor that people see on the outside. And during the pandemic, you made it your absolute point, your responsibility to reach out. If Sheirra doesn't hear from me in a month or two, she's pinging me. She's like, hey Harli, how's it going? And you have no idea. I felt like I communicated that, but I just want to go on the record and say it. Like, you have no idea how much that meant to me, because regardless of the way we started out, regardless of how the relationship started, you were adamant about nurturing this relationship, growing it, and saying, there's more to me than just this. And I truly, really became the biggest Dr. Granville advocate. Like, I was just like, we got in a review and your name came up, and I was like, y'all better give Sheirra her flowers. And it was like, people were like, oh yes, absolutely. And I was just like, even when Melanie was your coach, Melanie and I had conversation, and we were like, y'all, Sheirra has come such a long way, and to see where she is now, and I'm just blown away by the amount of growth that you have done just in that amount of time. And according to your book, there's a lot more that has happened even before that, right? And so I want to make sure we get into that. But so, like I mentioned before, she has written a whole book, okay, about her story of overcoming and perseverance, which speaks volume to who you are. But did you always know that you wanted to write a book, or at some point did something happen to where you were just like, okay, I have to put my story out there? Because let me tell you something, there are so many people who will read this book, who have read this book, that this will impact so many lives, right? So how did the concept of writing a book even come? And then we're going to get into your story, your actual story.
It's interesting you asked that question, because I'm asked that question so often. Mm-hmm. Well, what made you write a book? How did you know you were going to get to this point? I have been writing since 3rd grade, actually. And it was then that I felt that, okay, I'm really good at this. So although in third grade I had no intentions of writing a book, it was just something that I did well with. I wrote a story for chorus, and it turned into a play that we had corporate sponsors that really supported us, because we performed this play in front of the entire school and had people come in. So that was a really proud moment for me.
So you're like a little Shonda Grimes
in third grade.
In third grade. Okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah, so it kind of evolved. When I got to high school, we had a senior class essay. I entered and won that. So I'm like, okay, I'm really good at this. When I had papers for school to do. And that's where my passion for English and teaching comes from, that writing passion. So in high school is when I realized, okay, I have a story to tell. And that's kind of where entering college, I'm like, hey, I need to put this book out there with things that, I've dealt with and just sharing that story. So I would say it's been a while that I knew I wanted to write. It was just a matter of getting started. And I know so many people get started and they don't finish.
Or they don't even know where to start.
Right.
Right.
So it was important for me to get it done. And all it took was a trip. I'll never forget, during the pandemic in September, I took a trip to my uncle's in Orlando just for the weekend. And it was just he and I, and it was something we had never done. We talked, and because he does a lot of traveling for work, and just so happened that weekend he wasn't traveling, so I flew down. And just being there, I was in such a peaceful space. When I got back to Atlanta, I'm like, it's time. It's time to write. And I started, and before a year was up, I was done and was moving through publishing and everything. So it can be done if you commit to it. And it didn't take me, I didn't have to write every day to get the book done. It was months where I would maybe write 3 or 5 days out a month. And that was it. And that was enough for me. But it's like when I started, like I never forget being with my parents Thanksgiving of that year, and I literally sat after dinner, sat on the couch and write, and it was just like, you've been writing a lot. And I think at that point I had wrote 2 chapters already. So I was adamant about getting it done, and I got it done. So everyone asked, well, how long did it take? I'm like, it took less than a year, because again, I started in October of 2020, and I submitted my first copy of my manuscript to my publisher in May of 2021.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it didn't take a full year.
Okay. So I want to go, that's amazing. Because I know some people out there who shall remain nameless, Cindy, who have been talking about writing a book. Okay, this is your aha moment. Like, get to it. Like, start, write the book. But I want to talk a little bit about the inspiration behind your book, because to put your story out there, first of all, it's scary, right? Because now, like, you're putting something out there, you can't take it back.
Right.
It's there, right? And now you're vulnerable. So you're telling people, okay, this is what happened. Like, this is my experience. This is my story. Let's go back to the beginning. So you were in a relationship with someone, and that relationship started unraveling, and you've been through abuse. You have ran for your life because of this person. You had a child with this person. So I don't want to tell your story, but tell us a little bit about that story. Because that's, well, you have to read the book, so I'm not gonna say it. But that's, pretty much the beginning of the book. So
Right. So you made a point early on about, putting things out there and being vulnerable. And of course, I'm a very private person. A lot of people, even those closest to me, there's still some things they don't know. I have that conversation with God because he knows everything. But doing this book meant that, okay, I had to be open, honest, and transparent. I'm not the writer that's going to sugarcoat things or make up stories.
Well, you're not the person that's going to sugarcoat
Right.
things if you know. Yeah, no.
Right. So I wanted it to be authentic. I really wanted people to just hear and see that, okay, she went through this, but
Ladies, I know there's so much to do and not enough time in the day. Trust me, I'm right there with you. But what are you doing for yourself? Well, I've recently discovered Body Bar Pilates. Let me tell you a little bit about it. Body Bar Pilates will challenge all of your major muscle groups and provide you with a full body workout. Wow. Listen, I had to check it out. I took a class with Sheirra and it was amazing. They have workouts for all skill levels, whether you're just starting out or you're just looking for a new way to move your body. This is the community for you. Check out my friends at Body Bar Pilates East Cobb or give them a call at 678-941-4371. And don't forget to mention me, Harli G.
she got through it and so can I. Because that was why I shared my story. I feel like it's so many individuals out there that have gone through or are now dealing with some of the same things that are in my book, so it was important to share. So the story came about, essentially I was 19, in the church. My religion is holiness, and we have very strict guidelines. There were things that we just didn't do, and if you did, it was frowned upon. So I was 19. I went to my grandmother and I told her, I said, I'm pregnant. And I wasn't expecting the words that came, but she was just like, well, that means you got to get married. And I'm like, married?
What does that have to do with anything?
It's like, okay, married? I'm like, never thought about that, but okay. As I know, growing up seeing the other women in our church that, who weren't married, they lost their roles in the church. If they were on the usher board, they had to step down. If they were in the choir, they had to step down. And these were roles that they lost for a year until the child was a year. So I started thinking about that. I'm just like, marriage? Don't really know about marriage. I'm 19, still pretty young, just really got out of high school a year prior. So what does that look like? So because I was in a space of, okay, do I want to, in addition to losing the roles, it meant that I had to stand up in front of my church and apologize for essentially becoming pregnant out of wedlock. Yeah.
So I want to stop you right there, right? Because even after all of that today, I can still hear that, your faith is your foundation and it is very important. A lot of people would say, this is the reason why I don't go to church. This is the reason why I don't like church people. Or this is the reason why, church is a crock of whatever, right? But you don't feel that way.
No, and that's what I put in the book in chapter 7, which is my spiritual test. I often, prior to age 30, lived my life for my family. I lived in a way that I didn't want to disappoint my family. So what they thought, suggested, hinted at, it mattered to me. So I got to a point to where I was no longer living my life for my family. I love them, I respect them, I appreciate them, but I was no longer living my life for them. I realized that there's only one person that can judge me, and that's God. Rest my grandmother and my grandfather's soul. They were very instrumental in my growth spiritually, but I got to that point to where I was no longer concerned with what they thought, what they suggested. I had to part ways with that. And when I started focusing on building that relationship with God the way I wanted and needed, things were so much easier for me. Growing up, it was a heavy focus on religion, and I had a conversation with one of my really, really close sister friends, and she was just like, I think that's where we err in religion, where we focus so much on religion versus the relationship that we should be focusing on with God. And I got to that place, and it took me longer than I feel it should have. But by 30, it was just like, oh, you shouldn't do that. Okay.
That's nice.
I'm going to take that to God, and I know that He will lead and guide me.
Yes.
And that's where I was. So no, I didn't let that hinder my faith and my belief. I still attend church regularly. Mm-hmm. I still support and do things. And I'm involved in the church. Mm-hmm. I won't take anything away from that, no matter what my experience growing up was.
Because it's part of your journey.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm still really committed, but I had to get to that place to where I wanted a relationship with God, and it didn't matter what anyone else said or suggested that I do. I was now living my life for me and not what others thought. Yeah. So I had to get to that place.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, I commend you for that because, like I said, I feel like there would have been a lot of people who would have said at that point, yeah, no. You know, all these, and that's what gives, I don't like using the name religion, but that's what gives, you know, people that actively practice their faith, and whether it is going to church, whether it's just, like you said, focusing on your relationship with God, however you choose, but I think it gives church a bad name because now people are focused on that versus what church is really meant to be, right? But anyway, so I just like kind of cut you in the middle of your story. So you are trying to make a decision of whether you're going to stand in front of the church and confess your sins, quote unquote, or you're going to marry this guy that you've known for how long?
At that point, it was only a couple of months actually, because we met in August of 2000, and in March of 2001 is when I found out I was pregnant. And when I took it to my grandmother, it could have been in April. So that's not long. From August to April. It's not a long time. Mm-mm. But this was something I was sitting here considering after I mentioned this to my grandmother about being pregnant and having to get married. And it was just like, okay. Never thought marriage would be where it's something that I felt forced to do to keep my roles in the church or to keep from having to stand up and apologize. And as I mentioned in my book, I agreed to this. Me and my partner mutually agreed to do this, what we, felt was right
at the time.
Right. Mm-hmm. So, needless to say, I still had to stand up in front of my church and apologize for getting pregnant. So I'm just like,
that defeated the whole purpose.
I could have stayed home with my father and my baby, never been married, and this would have never been a thing. But I'm like, so it was, it was a challenge. Okay. To agree to do this, to feel like this is something I had to do because we had this conversation. I kind of like felt coerced and forced to do so, and it's like, okay, but still have to come back and still apologize. So it definitely caused some disappointment, some aggravation,
yes,
and some frustrations with having to. After all this, you still want me to stand up and apologize.
Did you feel shame?
I didn't feel shame. I didn't feel shame because the sin, quote unquote, was being pregnant out of wedlock, but I got married, and I was still married. Even when I was told I had to apologize, I was still married. So why is it that I'm having to apologize? Because I'm the pastor's granddaughter, and because I had another cousin that had to stand up and apologize for getting pregnant because she was pregnant too. And I'm just like, that was baby 6, 7, or 8 for her out of wedlock. She never got married. This was baby number 1 for me. And I got married.
Yes.
So it's not that I was ashamed, and in that moment I was so angry that I was forced to do so, because the first Sunday night I was supposed to do it, I didn't go to church. And my grandfather sent a message through my grandmother and my dad that if I didn't come to church and apologize, I was going to lose my rose or something to the effect that I needed to get to church, basically. And so when I had to do the apology, though it was authentic, I was angry.
I bet.
And I mentioned that because one, I got the message from my grandmother, you have to get married. You got to get married. And then for my grandfather to say, well, you still have to stand up and apologize because you all both got pregnant. And I'm like, but I got married and she didn't. And this is not the first time that so it really, and after that, Harley, I have to say, I stayed away from church for, I want to say, about a month maybe.
That's it. Oh Lord, I would have been. Pardon me.
I was,
but just, I would have been like, oh, it's gonna be a few years before I get back.
I just was so bothered by the whole situation, but I had to get to a place of forgiveness and really just moving forward. And it was just like,
but forgiving who? Your grandparents for making you go through that situation? What about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I did at the moment what I felt was best. It was what was told to me. But it is truly the biggest mistake to date. And I feel that the forgiveness for myself for doing that was granted years ago.
Okay.
I don't hold on to, I don't let things fester and hold on to it. I release it and let it go. But it was definitely, if it was one thing that I could take back in this lifetime, that would definitely be it.
Yeah.
It would definitely be it.
So you get married to this person. So you get married to him, and how was it at first? Was it great? Were you living that married life, or immediately you knew there was some concerns?
That is a good question. Interestingly enough, a lot of us are in relationships where we see red flags and we totally ignore them.
Say it again for the people in the back that did not hear that.
We see those red flags and we disregard them, we ignore them, it's all right, it's that's not what it is, but it's really what it is.
Or we think, oh, he'll change. I can get him to change.
Yeah.
Do you really truly think that you can change somebody?
No.
Okay. Just want to put that little bit out there. Okay.
No, not at all. So I'll go back to when we first met. When we first met, he was the charming.
But they're always like that when you first meet them, right?
Always. And we were again 6-7 months in when all of this transpired, and things kind of moved fast because we had moved in together, and after meeting August of 2000, we had moved in together February of 2001. So we were already residing in the same space at that point. And then a month later is when I found out I was pregnant. So everything was okay. And then we've had some moments where he would leave, go with his father, come back, he would be drunk, would be a little aggressive, and I'm like, what is it? Because again, I was still young, so I wasn't familiar with what alcohol does. I wasn't familiar with what drugs do because I wasn't around these things.
Yeah, you didn't grow up.
So I didn't know.
Yeah.
So it was just a like, okay, is this really happening? I was like, why? Don't go with your dad, because I would see.
Because you were like, that's just gonna stop it right
don't
there. Me telling him not to go.
Just don't.
Just don't go over there. That solves the problem.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where men, if you ask men not to do something, it feels like you're taking their manhood. You're keeping them from doing what they want to do. I'm like, but if you see something is destroying or impacting what we're building, why not stop?
Yeah.
So I was fighting for my life, I want to say shortly after we made the decision to get married or was married. I can't really say, but the abuse was there. I know I was pregnant with my son and I experienced abuse from when we found out, during, and after I experienced the abuse. But at this point, it was, I'm married. And I think because I was married, I dealt with it longer than I would have. And then I got to that place where I never saw my mom get jumped on and hit.
Wait, who got he jumped your mom?
No. I said I.
Oh,
So
you're
in
telling
growing
yourself
up,
like this stuff doesn't really happen.
this is
Got
not
it.
what I grew. This is not what
This
I
is
grew
how
up
I-
around. This is not what
Exactly.
I was, told that you should allow this. I'm like,
Yeah.
because like I said, I never saw anyone jump on my mom. And that's what I'm saying. I wasn't in a household where I saw abuse and it was tolerated. It was allowed. So it was like,
No.
this is not what I'm
So
going
was
to
the
do.
abuse physical, mental, verbal? Like how was the abuse?
It was always physical.
Always
It
physical.
was always physical, and it would be after he come home. And in my mind at that time, as a 20-year-old, because I had a birthday shortly after, a 20-year-old now married, I'm thinking in my mind, okay, does alcohol do this to you? And I later learned that it was drugs. It was coke.
Multiple things. Yeah.
So it was one of those things where I was oblivious to what it was besides alcohol, because I'm thinking he just coming home drunk, and he would always get this way when he's with his father. And I'm like, just don't go over there. And then when he comes home, it's, he just mean and angry for no reason, and pick the very smallest things to just go off about. So it was scary, because I didn't know when he left the house and came back if it was going to be a scenario where I had to fight for my life. And I did numerous times, running out of the house with no shoes on, getting people to help me, even his sister, because she was, I'm not allowing you to hit on her, not when I'm right here. So she would be in the midst of it. He would come to my job. They would have to ban him from my job. And numerous times he was arrested for it and would just do it all over again. And it was a final straw that sent me to the hospital. And it was just like, this is not happening again.
So in the book, you talked about coming home one day and you didn't know what was happening. And you're like, wait a minute, this is my home. Like, what explain to me what happened that day.
Which scenario are you referring to?
I'm talking about like when you were, your kid was at home, or was he at daycare? I can't remember what, okay, because it's been a minute, but you came home and you were like, what is happening? Because I live here. And you were trying to explain to the cops that, hey, I live here. This is my home. But they were like, ma'am, you can't go in there. I think they were like busting him or something or whatever.
So that scenario actually wasn't him.
Okay.
That wasn't my husband.
Okay.
So that was a relationship that I was in where they called me and told me that I needed to get home because they had my son. And I knew that my son was supposed to be with the individuals that stayed with us. We had like one of my boyfriends at the time, his homeboy, stayed there with us, and he watched Elijah for the hours that I was at work. So when they told me I needed to get there, and when I got there, they wouldn't let him come to me. And that was the scenario where they were trying to get inside the home to get my boyfriend at the time because of whatever was going on in the neighborhood at the time. They were just like, it had been some burglaries in the neighborhood that, potentially he was a suspect for. So in that instance was when Elijah was taken to in defects custody.
I remember that.
So they literally had me follow them to the police department. And that's part of it that I didn't really share in the book. They took me in for questioning. I wasn't even there. But because I was there, I had to release. It was either he's going to be in the system or you need to have someone come and get him. And when I tell you the first couple of people that I tried to release my son to, and they did that background check, they was like, nope, we can't release him there. I was trying to avoid having to call my parents to tell them what was going on. And I essentially had to do so because the cousin that normally keeps Elijah, I didn't realize she had something on her background that they would not release him to her. Okay. So I had to call my dad. I'm like, listen, if you guys don't come and get Elijah, he's going to the system. DFACS has him, and they will not release him to my cousin that I told him. So my dad ended up coming to get him, but he was now in their custody. I could not get Elijah back until I could show them that I had a reliable place for him to stay where he was going to be safe and that he was going to be somewhere with responsible adults during the day while I work.
How long did that take for you to show that?
So it was about a week.
Okay.
So about a week, and they did release him back to me. But I had to show them where we were going to be staying. So the caseworker had to come to the home that we were going to be staying. They had to know what daycare he was going to be going to, which I had already made those provisions for that. And then they released him back to me, and they was like, well, you can reclaim your custody of him on, like, it was like that Friday. So about a week. Okay. But it was like one of those moments where I'm used to my child being with me every single day. And although he was with family, it was like one of those things that's nerve. It's like, I can't go over there and get him right now. I have to wait until they say, hey, he's now being released back into your custody.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, I kind of jumped a little bit, but because I thought that was part of it. But so going back to your husband, you are in this relationship. You're experiencing physical abuse. At what point do you get to, this is enough, I can't, I have to go?
It was the same moment, but a few things happened. The last encounter where I slipped in the hallway and then he climbed on top and was just punching me in my face, so much so that I felt my face like bubble up, and I knew something was wrong. And when I looked at my face, it was so big and puffy. And when I went, because I had to go to the emergency room, and when I got there is when I realized I had a busted blood vessel in my eye from the numerous punches in my face. And I ended up getting away long enough for him to flee in the car. I went to the kitchen and I grabbed all the knives. And with the knives, I was able to get out of the door. But then, of course, Elijah was there, so I wasn't going to go close because I needed to make sure he was okay. But as soon as I was out of the door, it was, oh, I gotta go. And then that's when he fled in the car and was gone. So, of course, I had to then call family. I had to call my dad to let them know what was going on and everything. And my dad came over, the police came over, and then we all went to the doctor. And then I want to say the next day, when I talked to my grandmother, she told me, she said, Sheirra, your dad told me that the police better find him before he does. And in that moment, I knew it was over because my dad means everything to me. And I cannot see anything happening to him because he's trying to cause harm to someone who caused harm to me. And with him being away, like in jail or prison, because he's, you know, taking that revenge for what he's done to me. So I'm like, that's it. I'm not willing in that moment to, one, put me or my son in jeopardy anymore, or lose my father because he's trying to get back at the individual that hurt me. So that was the moment that did it for me. It was done.
And so you decided to go back there and get your stuff and get out. And it is that what happened? And in the meantime, he's gone. He's out somewhere. Nobody knows where he is. and then you leave at that point.
So I stayed because the apartment that I was living in at the time was mine.
Okay.
So he left.
Okay.
When he ran and left in the car, he took everything, and then of course because they was looking for the car came back, and then he was gone.
Okay.
That was it. So it was.
That was it. That was the end of him. Didn't. So have you ever seen him after that?
No, we've seen each other after that, but it wasn't frequently. As a matter of fact, now he's like non-existent, to be completely honest.
Okay.
Because it's been years. And I always said that, no matter what happens to us as far as our relationship goes, I'm never going to deny you the relationship with your child if you have the capacity to be there the way you should as a father. And he's never had the capacity to do so.
Has Elijah asked about him?
That's another story for another day.
Okay.
It's forthcoming.
Okay.
But I'm truly all Elijah has truly known. And of course, when boys get older, they start asking questions.
Yes.
They want to know and everything. And it's kind of a complicated situation for him because Elijah was too young to know about the abuse. And I kept the abuse from him. However, a family member made it a point to tell him, and it caused a ripple effect. And it caused anger, it caused lashing out, it caused acting out, because he was now at that age where they go through that change because they're going through puberty anyway. And it was a really trying time, which is also some things that I discussed in the book, because he had now learned that I experienced physical abuse from the person that helped make him, So, and he has to go through that forgiveness for him. And I tell him all the time, yes, it was an unfortunate situation for me, but I had to forgive, because if I didn't, I would not have been able to move forward and even explore the possibility of a new relationship if I didn't. And I'm like, so you have to forgive for two different things. You have to forgive for the fact that he was physically abusive to me, and you have to forgive for the fact that he hasn't been what you needed in a father these last 21 years of his life now. So it's just it's a lot, but he has those moments where in the past he would ask, and again, I never blocked him from seeing him or spending time with him. His sister, when she would have something and she would invite us, we would go, because I'm like, I understand that he has another family as well, and if you all want to be involved in his life, I'm not going to block that, but you all have to take the initiative.
You're not going to do that. Yes, right.
So, and that's how that's gone.
Okay. So you go through all of that. Then we talked a little bit about another relationship where that did not end well as well. You do get your son back. Thank God. You get your son back. Now you're trying to figure out, now you're trying to settle. You're trying to figure out, okay, what am I doing here? How am I going to be able to keep my son and I safe? How am I going to be able to provide for my son? So then, tell us a little bit, because I'm kind of leery. I don't want you to say too much, because I want people to get the book and support you and read your whole story. But obviously you end up being a whole doctor. So okay, all right. Talking about resiliency and overcoming, but so now you're at a point where you're like, okay, what am I gonna do? Like, what am I doing? How am I going to provide for my son? How am I going to provide for myself? How am I going to provide that steady environment for him? So talk to me about that process.
It was definitely a stressful time, with that transition. I no longer had the extra income to cover bills and handle different things. I now had childcare costs, which is, we're talking about 20 years ago.
Oh,
so
girl.
I can imagine what it is now.
Listen. Whew.
So it was.
I had 4. in daycare at the same time. I just want to put that out there. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So it was definitely an adjustment, an uncomfortable adjustment, because there were times where I couldn't take care of the rent, the utilities, the car, and it caused me to move in with family or go back home for a little while and different things. So I was really struggling to obtain that stability that I needed. And because of that, it caused Elijah to, to be with a responsible adult, if you will. He, stayed with my cousin a lot, and that allowed me to get things back on track because I knew he was there with her during the week, and when I was off early during the week or off on the weekend, I would go get him and he would be with me wherever I was living at the time. So she was actually the cousin that helped me get a place. For some reason, I don't know if one of the previous apartments that I had was on my credit, but I couldn't get an apartment in my name at that time. So she put the apartment in her name. By her doing that, that really opened the door for me to get back to the stable place that I needed for my son. With me, paying everything on time, not having any issues with the leasing community. After about maybe 6 months, they allowed me to put the lease in my name. And moving forward, it was always in my name. So I built that so that I could have a stable place for me and Elijah. So although it took working 2, sometimes 3 jobs, I was in school. I think I found me and balance became acquainted a long time ago because I would have had to be where I had a child, a single mom, working multiple jobs, going to school, and just trying to make things happen the best way that I could. And I did. So when I achieved the stability part of it, I knew I wanted to get back to school. I knew that getting a degree was something I always wanted. That was always the goal. But when I ran into that challenge of losing financial aid and didn't have the resources to cover school, I knew, okay, I have to, put that on pause for now. But I was glad that I was able, after several years, I was able to go back. And then when I started back, it was like, okay, I'm not going to stop until I'm done. So when I got my first degree, my associates.
I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to go straight to I'm going to go get the bachelor's, then I'm going to get the master's, then I'm going to get who does that? But anyway, okay.
And that's exactly how it happened. I kid you not. In 2010, when I realized I was eligible for financial aid again, I had credits from when I started right after high school in 99. So I wanted to see how many of those credits they were going to accept, and they accept all of the credits. As long as I had a C or better, they accepted all of the credits. So within about 2 years, I was able to graduate with my associates. So my grandmother, she was still alive at the time, and she's like, I'm so proud. I don't know what took you so long, but I'm so proud.
This little thing called life, that's what happened. That's what took me so long.
Right.
Really?
And I didn't take it anyway. I was just like, I'm grateful that I'm here as well. But she didn't know that, I had lost financial aid and I had to sit out. So she didn't know that. But she was just like, I'm really glad and proud to see that you finished your associate. So she was just like, keep going. And I still hear her saying that day, keep going. So right after I got my associates in May of 2013, I was already accepted in Kennesaw State as a senior because they took all of my credits as well. So this is someone that's just getting their associates, but is considered a senior in their Bachelor of Arts program already. Wow. So it was like, okay, this is really good. And I literally graduated in May, started summer school with KSU in June.
Wow.
I didn't have a break. And then I was finished there a little over a year because I got my associates in 2013. I was graduating with my bachelor's in December of 2014.
Wow.
Yeah. So kind of moved on, but I had a roadblock.
Okay.
I did have a roadblock. I wanted to go to KSU for their Masters of Writing program because, again, writing is my passion. And even though I was there, I had over 3.0 GPA when I graduated. It was very competitive. And GRE was a factor. And not a good test taker, but
trust me,
really
I'm
smart
right there with you
when it comes to
Oh.
just doing the work and the
Yes.
content. So I was really, really discouraged because we had to submit our person statement, we had to submit recommendations, we had to submit the actual applications, I had to submit 25 sample pieces of my work. And it was I did everything to the T. And when I got the letter, it was so vague, telling me I wasn't accepted. It didn't say we didn't accept you because this was the reason or what have you. It was you weren't accepted. So me being who I am,
resilient,
I sent the director an email because it was literally, I was annoyed in the fact that he sent a letter that was so vague that didn't tell me what was it.
You
was
wanted
it my
more
writing
information?
Was it my writing samples? Was it my recommendations? What was it specifically?
Yes.
So when I sent the email, he was like, well, I apologize, but it was your scores. And I was like, okay. Well, my scores for the GRE doesn't tell you all that I'm not going to do well in this program. So I kept going. This was December when I was trying to because I was trying to be in grad school by January. So I could say, that's not going to happen. So I'm like, okay. Most schools require you to have the GRE. So I was like, okay, what can I do, because I'm not going to let the GRE stop me from getting into grad school. So I started exploring colleges that didn't require it. And when I did that, I found about 3 different schools, which was Phoenix, University of Phoenix was one, Strayer was another, and I can't remember what the third one was, but I talked to both, and I love the programs that Strayer had, and they didn't require the GRE. The only thing they needed was, I think at that time, they needed my grades, and if I had a GPA of like 2 point something, which I was way over, so I sent them. If they was like, yeah, you're more than qualified to start school here. So going to school with Strayer was so seamless. I didn't have no issues. It was the most seamless process, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I literally started at Strayer. That was probably the longest break that I had. It was like a 6-month period. So from December until about July, I wasn't in school. But that was the longest break I've had in 10 years, because I literally, even after that program,
I've been on a break for 20 years. Oh my gosh.
Right. So it was only about 6 months because I was determined to get done. So when I got the acceptance for Strayer, I was focused and ready. So I started in July of 2015, because I graduated September 2017.
I remember that. I do.
Yes.
So I remember Sheirra coming with her tuition reimbursement in January. Sheirra was not playing games. She was like, y'all about to give me all my money. And she would come. And I knew, I was like, Sheirra's going to be coming. And sure enough, January, you came, you had all your paperwork, and you were like, yep, here you go. Give me my money. And it never failed. It was like clockwork. And I even remember when you put in for your PhD, your dissertation, I was just like, y'all, she's making it happen. Like, this is happening. We have a PhD in the house. I mean, And I can't believe it, but it's almost time. But before we get off, I want to talk about something really quick because obviously the podcast is really truly about individuals like you who have these amazing stories of resilience, of overcoming, of perseverance, and that are like, listen, if I can come from this circumstance and be where I am today, there's hope for anyone. Absolutely. Right? There is absolutely hope for everyone. And you we've had this conversation before, but you're like, you have a PhD, but you're still at Gas South. And what you say, which is absolutely mind-blowing to me, is like, Harli, when it's time for me to go wherever it is that I need to be next, he'll tell me. Because I'm like, maybe I'm a little too shallow, or I'm a little too cocky, which is probably why baby Jesus knocked me down a couple of levels. Because if I had a whole PhD, I'd be like, y'all, see y'all. I thought the deuce is, I'm out, But you're like, no. I am walking in my journey the way I'm supposed to. And when that time comes, it will come. So do you really feel like you are walking in your purpose?
Yes, absolutely. And here's the thing. I think a lot of people think, okay, she has a doctorate. She has a whole doctor in front of her title. She should be doing this, that, and the other. And obtaining my doctorate degree was always a personal goal.
It ain't for everybody. It's for you.
I literally I just wanted to go and know that I have the absolute last degree. So it was a personal thing that I wanted. Not to say, hey, I'm coming for this job or this role or this. It's simply something that I wanted for me. It's a part of me. With my tutoring business, I absolutely feel I'm living out my purpose. I encourage, motivate, and help numerous students. Actually, my business will be 10 years next year, and I'm now looking for a space for that. So I do, although what I do at Gas South may not seem high for like the doctor title, I feel what I do outside of Gas South is I'm fulfilling my purpose. Absolutely. And the things that God wants me to do. Yes. So I truly feel like that. And I'm probably the most humble doctor you would ever meet.
Listen.
I'm just keeping it real.
I need to be the mouthpiece for you. Like, yeah, she got a whole degree. She's got a whole PhD, but that is so true what you say. And I'm gonna put my boss on blast right now, Solomon Jordan. But he always says we have these philosophy sessions in his office because Solomon is a pastor and he must preach. It's part of his DNA. But he's like, Harli, there's a purpose why I'm here at Gas South, but how I look at it is that feeds into my ultimate purpose. Absolutely. So Gas South helps me with my ultimate purpose. So although this may not feel like while you're at Gas South in the position that you're working in, and I don't know who this is for because I feel like somebody needs to hear that. You might be at your work environment right now. You might be in a position where you're like, I mean, it's okay. It's not miserable. That's not what I'm saying. But it's like, oh my gosh, I could be. But use that for your ultimate purpose. He was like, so I'm working here at Gas South. I'm making good money. And I'm able to go out and help out a church for free. They don't have to pay me. That is my ultimate purpose. Right. And that is how Gas South allows me to walk in my ultimate purpose. So even though answering phone calls, doing HR, marketing may not be your ultimate purpose, but what is that allowing? What is that enabling in your life to walk in your ultimate purpose? Some people are lucky that it's both. Their job is the ultimate purpose. They're aligned. Some people, it's a path. It's a journey, right? So this enables this to happen. So I'm glad you mentioned that because, you're right. People could be taking a look at you and thinking she's a whole doctor and she's where now? She's doing what? But they don't know. They don't know. And your journey is so unique to you and who you are. I'm actually reading a book right now called Killing Comparison by Nona Jones. She's actually one of the individuals that does the daily devotional in the Bible app. And you know, one of the things that she talks about, and Brene Brown talks about that too, is that stay in your lane. You looking over there, you comparing yourself to this person and that person for that title, for that position, for that house, for that car that they have. Mm-hmm. But that's not your journey. That has nothing to do with you. And oftentimes we do that even unconsciously. It's not that we mean to do it. We just like, we're like, oh yeah, she's got a whole PhD. I need to figure out what I'm doing with my life. No. Stay in your lane. So that's going to be the title of this podcast. Stay in your lane. The story of resiliency and perseverance. I truly, so we gotta talk about where to get the book. You do have a code for the listeners to find the book, so we need to put that out there, and I will also put it in the show notes. So if you're listening, go in the show notes and get the information on how to get the book. But please tell us where to find the book. Give us the code. Let's support Dr. Marci Granville.
Thank you. So the book is everywhere. I know some of you all are Prime members. You can get it through Amazon. You can get it through Barnes and Nobles, Target, Walmart. It is available globally, not just here in the United States, but everywhere. However, my code in the bubble 22 is only available on my website, which my website is www.author.Sheirramarci.com.
Okay.
So it's www.author.Sheirramarci.com.
Perfect. I will have, like I said, I will have that information in the show notes, so our listeners will be able to get to the link seamlessly. And I cannot tell you how amazing it was for you to come on and share your story, because like I said, your story makes you vulnerable. You're putting your story out there, and once it's out there, you can't take it back. Right. But I really truly believe that through that story, somebody listening, you have just given them hope. You have just given them the opportunity to say, you know what, I can do this. She did it, I can do it. And I strongly believe in that. That is the whole message of the platform. You are not alone. And if you need help, reach out. We have resources. We'll be able to help you, whether it's, hey, you know, Inside the Bubble has resources. I can even partner with Dr. Granville and we can get you some resources. But if you are, and I don't know who needs to hear this, I don't know why I keep saying this, but if you are in a situation where you need to get out, reach out to us. DM us on social media, Inside the Bubble HG. I will be able to see the message. We'll be able to provide you with some help and resources. Okay. But thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Granville, for coming on the show and sharing your story. And insiders, I really appreciate you all supporting the show. Don't forget to like, share, follow, and subscribe to the show. All the information is in the show notes. And as I mentioned before, we are on social media, Facebook and Instagram, Inside the Bubble HG. So you can go out there, check us out, drop a heart emoji. We drop new episodes every week. Every Monday we have new episodes, and we have amazing inspirational stories like this story right now. And before I leave, of course, I have to say, remember what I always say, there's purpose in your story. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed our show today. Hit the subscribe button and share. Share this pod with your family, with your friends, with your girlfriends, and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Inside the Bubble with HG. Keep the conversation going. Drop us a heart emoji. Engage with us. We would love to hear from you. New episodes are dropping every Monday on your podcast streaming platforms. And remember, there's purpose in your story.